Hello and welcome to a second part of recovering from schizoid personality disorder. In this video, I'd like to focus on internal and interpersonal dynamics of someone who suffers from this disorder, or someone who simply identifies with having a schizoid character and would like to improve their life, improve their condition, or simply grow as a person. Now, I'm not psychiatrist or psychologist, so I cannot present any forms of treatment or therapy, just like a qualified professional would do, but I can simply offer some life coaching tips that possibly can increase the quality of your life or help you deal with certain things that you are not happy about. Anyway, as I've talked in the previous video, the major mechanism that operates in schizoid personality is that of dissociation. So dissociation enables a person to kind of get away from their feelings, push these feelings away to a point where they don't feel anything, so they don't really have to deal with emotions. Now, for a person with this personality, this dissociation occurs quite automatically. It's kind of embedded within their personality and sense of self. So it's not really, really helpful to tell such person to stop dissociating because it will not really have any impact whatsoever. But there are certain things that one can do to reduce this dissociation and get in touch with their feelings and emotions. And I've addressed it in the first part of the video. Now, what happens under this layer of dissociation of a person with schizoid personality? And what are these feelings that such person will try to escape unconsciously, obviously, or consciously, depends on a person. There are many different things and dynamics to consider underneath this layer of dissociation. And the major theme, if you like, which obviously arises during childhood, is something called abandonment depression. And this can be a result either of severe abuse and neglect, or simply a mismatch between a child and a parent, so that there is no real connection because, for example, a parent might suffer from their own problems and struggles with expressing emotions or connecting with other people, or the parent might be dismissive of their child, ignorant perhaps, or they might be simply unable to connect with a child on this proper level of kind of healthy human connection. So what happens is that the child goes away and feels obviously abandoned or ignored. And the same dynamics occurs where the child is physically abused. So this lack of connection with the parent perhaps could be considered as a form of abuse. However, some people might say that the abuse is quite a strong word for this lack of proper connection with a parent. So simply saying that there is no emotional connection or investment from the part of the parent could be kind of sufficient description of what's going on. So anyway, the child goes away and feels abandoned because there is no parent to connect to, no matter what they do. And because of this abandonment, perceived abandonment, what obviously arise are feelings of depression, sadness, loneliness, exile. So this is where this key concept of self and exile and schizoid personality begins to form, because the self is essentially in exile due to lack of connection with the parent. Now, as the child grows, he or she learns that there is no point to express your feelings or emotions to other people because they're gonna ignore you, they don't really care, they're not gonna understand, or maybe it's troubling to other people, and so on and on. So at this point, the so-called false self or the dissociative self begins to form, which is a mask that covers the true self that contains all these unpleasant feelings of loneliness and abandonment. Now, when we fast forward to adulthood, most likely a person with schizoid will not even remember on the emotional level what they really felt as a child, what the true self really feels and what sort of feelings and emotions they have because the false self, the dissociative self, took charge of the whole personality, took charge of the whole self, if you like, and hence there is this disconnection between one's awareness and one's emotions and feelings. Now, depending on the severity of this disorder, some people might still be able to feel certain things and react to various things. They might be still very sensitive to their environment. And on the positive side, the dissociative self or the dissociation or the false self can actually be considered as a strength that many people without schizoid personality might not be able to cultivate, because when you dissociate, you are not easily swayed by emotions and feelings, and therefore you can gain a wider perspective on what's going on around you. So the dissociation itself, or the false self, and this whole mechanism shouldn't be considered as something entirely bad or entirely destructive, because there are many positive things to be gained from it. However, the false self, the dissociation itself, prevents a person from forming meaningful relationships with others and connecting with other people, because there's no real exchange of emotions and feelings between two people, because a schizoid person is dissociated and doesn't relate to people on this emotional level. So obviously it's very difficult to form connections with others. So many schizoids strive to form connections with others, but at the same time, they don't want these connections. So there are two contrasting mechanisms. From one side, forming connections with others means that we have to deal with feelings and emotions. We have to share ourselves with another person. And it's something that schizoids don't really want to do, because sharing our feelings and emotions with another person implies that we have to deal with these feelings. And so very often we develop various excuses of why we don't want to connect with other people. Probably because other people are stupid, or maybe they cannot understand us, or maybe it's entirely pointless to express ourselves, our feelings and emotions and or thoughts. But from another side, there's this drive to connect due to overwhelming feelings of loneliness and exile, abandonment, and feeling separated from the rest of the world. So essentially it's a state of limbo, because no matter what you do, whether you go and connect with others, whether you don't do it, the result is the same, which is avoidance of relationships and essentially a schizoid position. Now, the very important skill to learn for all schizoids when it comes to personal relationships and social relationships is assertiveness. So why assertiveness? When it comes to schizoid personality, the common fear of relationships with others, the common concern, is that we are gonna lose ourselves, that we are gonna lose some part of ourselves or our identity. And hence, when we enter these relationships, it might feel like an extremely uncomfortable thing to do. And when the schizoid is pushed to share their feelings and emotions or their private thoughts when in the relationship with other person, they feel extremely exposed, because obviously that requires them to connect with their true self, which is preciously hidden from the world by the dissociative self or by the false self. So most likely when the schizoid is pressured to do it, they will probably avoid relationships altogether in order to avoid these unpleasant feelings which they cannot properly name. Now, this is associated again with the childhood and lack of possibility to truly express themselves to their parents, because there was no one there to truly receive them, whether there was some abuse going on or neglect, or simply lack of parental attention to the child. So obviously the major step in the recovery is the ability to express oneself, but without losing one's sense of self. So that's where the assertiveness is coming in, because when you enter the relationship with another person, it doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. And obviously being assertive enables to keep these boundaries important for a sense of self or a sense of identity. Now, someone might say, but I don't feel anything at all. I have no emotions, I have no feelings, and I don't care about other people at all. So there's no point in forming relationships for me on the first place. If such is the case, one must work on their feelings on the first place. So this involves paying attention to various bodily sensations, as well as I would like to add following expressive impulses. So what I mean by that is, because the dissociative self or the false self keeps the true self from self-expression and connecting with the world, something that could reverse this process and allow the true self to emerge and express itself would be to, on every occasion when we have something to say or we have something to share with other person, we simply need to do it. But obviously, it's not that simple, it's not that straightforward, because then all of these uncomfortable feelings arise associated with connecting with others. And connecting with others is essentially a two-way process of exchange of private feelings or thoughts. So these uncomfortable feelings kind of depend on the person and what they went through in the past. But the common feelings include shame or anxiety. Now, this arises from the fact that we are not used to connect with the world by our true self. So when we do it, we feel exposed. And feeling exposed could be compared to, feeling naked, probably. So that's where the shame and anxiety is coming from. So we must pass through this barrier in order to connect with the world around us. And in order to allow the true self, the one which is hidden under the dissociation, to emerge and connect with the world around us. I don't think one should entirely force this process or put a lot of pressure on oneself, because that could be quite frustrating and maybe even make things worse. It's a kind of delicate job to reduce the size of the false self and increase the size of the true self. And maybe it could be compared to trying to feed some wild animal. So obviously you cannot approach it, very nervously or very quickly, but allow it to come to you slowly, without too much pressure or stress or anger. Now, sorting out the false self from the true self doesn't just happen on the emotional level, but also on the cognitive level, in a way that many beliefs or opinions or preferences or values, they are there to keep the true self hidden and protect it from, rejection or unpleasant feelings or abandonment and so on and on. So, for example, a person might say that other people are not capable of understanding them, which essentially enables this protection of the true self and prevents a person from connecting with other people, because there's no point in connecting with others if they cannot understand me. So one would need to sort out their belief system and be honest about why they hold a certain value, why they hold a certain opinion of others or themselves, why they believe something is accurate and something isn't, and so on and on. So this takes a quite honest reflection, and it might be useful to actually get some professional help from the outside in order to have this objective point of view. Because when we are entirely subjective, we might be prone to bias, especially if we are used to thinking through the false self and not the true self. So when we are thinking through the false self, we might be kind of keep trying to protect the true self from the exposure. So as a short summary of this video, I'm mostly focused on this internal dynamics of one's mind. So a schizoid person will mostly operate through the false self, the part of the self that is dissociated. And this enables the protection of the true self, which contains all the feelings and emotions from the past, as well as is able to connect with other people and the world around them. So true self-expression is the key aim of the recovery, where a person honestly interacts with the world around them without the dissociation, and without censoring themselves in order to protect their vulnerable self, which might be subjected to, unpleasant feelings or rejections from others. An important part of this expression would be building the skill of assertiveness, which provides a healthy protection of the true self, not the dysfunctional, just like the false self does. So assertiveness and a true self-expression could be a key terms to remember when trying to recover from schizoid. But most importantly, considering therapy, considering the step of exposing oneself truthfully to another human being could be a big step in the recovery. And it is something that many people could find beneficial as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.